Welcome to the Unity Homes webinar. I'm Mark Hertzler, Director of Unity Homes, and this is Alison Kay, our sales team lead.
Yes.
So thank you for joining us today. And Alison's going to let you know what our topic is.
So as we let more people kind of join, we'll just introduce you briefly to the topic. Today, we're talking about choosing your local builder and the land, choosing land and your local builder. So if you're early in the process and you're trying to work your way through those two steps, today is the perfect opportunity to learn a little bit more about that.
So again, we'll be going through, Alison and I have some topics that we'll be talking about along those lines of how to choose your land, also how to pick a local builder. Then we will have a short video at the end from one of our project managers, and we'll follow that up with time for Q&A, and we'll answer your questions. So a little bit about who we are first. I assume that most of you signed up for this, so you're a little bit familiar with Unity Homes. But just to give you a little bit bigger picture of who Unity Homes is and what we do, we are part of the Bensonwood Homes company. So Bensonwood has been in business for over 50 years now. And there are several different brands associated with Bensonwood. Unity Homes is one of them. There's also a brand called Open Home, and then Bensonwood Custom and Tectonics. Bensonwood Custom obviously is the full custom version of the company. Tectonics is the version of the company that will work with outside architects, designers that can design using our panelized system. And then Unity Homes and Open Home are product-based companies that are working directly with homeowners.
We always like to start off with explaining a little more in depth what Unity Homes offers. So we are high performance based homes. We are also offsite fabricated, and more specifically, we are panelized home builder. So the first question that might come to mind is, what is high performance? Closely associated with high performance is energy efficiency. But high performance actually builds onto that to include health, comfort, durability, and resiliency as well. Offsite construction simply means that it's been built in a factory somewhere other than the home site and usually shipped to the site. And panelization is the form of offsite fabrication where we're putting panels together. So our homes go together a little bit more like a gingerbread house rather than modular, which comes together in boxes. With panelization, we can do all kinds of foundation types, including slab on grade, full height foundation, and walkout foundations as well. So all of our designs that we offer through Unity Homes are designed specifically to work with our offsite fabrication, panelization, and the shipping that we need to do.
And if you're interested in finding out more about our form of offsite construction and the panelization, we do offer factory tours on a regular basis, and you can go to our website and sign up for those. We have a production facility where we produce all those panels in Keene, New Hampshire. That facility was opened up in 2017, and it is about 110,000 square feet. That's where all the roof, wall, floor panels are produced. And that facility is actually gets about 2/3 of its energy use or electrical use from solar that's mounted on the roof.
Unity Homes primarily works in the Northeast. We found that to kind of be our sweet spot when you take into account that we are high performance and really well insulated. It does well in climate zone 5 and higher. It's kind of where the insulation levels are geared towards. And the shipping that is incurred with on any offsite fabrication does well to be, in close proximity to where we are in Keene, New Hampshire. So we found that most of our projects happen in the Northeast, but we can build anywhere in the United States. We've had projects as far west as Wyoming and as far south as North Carolina. So whether or not the individual shipping costs make sense for a project can be very project based.
Yeah, and as a broader company, the Bensonwood umbrella has built in every state in the country. So it's certainly possible. And as Allison said, we are mostly in the Northeast. And where we make sense working alongside with a local builder is that we can solve some of the labor shortages that we're seeing in the construction industry. So if we're doing a large portion of that project in our factory and then delivering it to site, that is less labor that is needed on site. And there are certain areas where that's a bigger issue than others. And there are certain areas where high performance construction is also not common. And we certainly can add a lot of value in those areas. So as I mentioned before, I think many of you are probably somewhat familiar with us, and we're not going to get deep today into our whole process. But just to talk quickly about what we do and how we do it at Unity Homes. When you go to our website, we have a page called Home Plans. So you can go there and you can look at what we call express plans. These are pre-designed plans that you can pick as is, or you can work within our streamlined design system, which takes those plans, takes those components and allows you to mix and match them to come up with a format that works for you. Overall, we work in three sort of large steps. First step is the planning. So you can pick your plan, you can use the streamlined system to put it together. Then we'll build it in our factory, deliver it on site, and then it gets finished off on with your local builder.
So before you get started, and maybe the spot where most of you are at today is finding that land and understanding what is important to you about that land when you go to make that decision. So the first question is where do you want to live? Is that a specific state, a specific town? You can't really change the location afterwards, right? When you're building a house, that's a decision that isn't easily changeable in the future. So being flexible there is also going to give you the most options. So when it comes to the cost of land, the availability of land, and the type of lands that you're looking for, wherever you can be flexible on that, you'll definitely have more options. Another question that you might want to ask is about density. So do you want to be in a really rural area? Do you want to be more in a neighborhood or in a downtown setting? Unity Homes can work really well in either of those situations. We've done some infill projects where it's been more urban, and we've also done lots of projects that are more rural. So kind of thinking about where you want to be. Are amenities important to you? So how close you are to grocery stores and schools and emergency services or healthcare, public transportation even. So those are some things to consider to answer the why question or where question.
Yeah, and as people are choosing where they want to build their house, there's a lot of features about that specific site that could be important. One of them is a view. So does that property have a view? Are you looking for a view? Do you want to be close to your neighbors? Do you want to be far away from your neighbors?
You don't want the neighbors to be the view.
Yeah, exactly. You want the scenery to be the view. Those are things to consider. And actually is a really good point that how close you are to other lots and looking at the adjacent lots to see where potential build spots could be may impact your site as well. So it's something to consider. And certainly having a good idea of your total budget upfront is going to help you narrow that down. There's a lot of things that are involved in the budget. There's the cost of the land. That's a big one. But then there's also considerations for the improvement of the land. And depending on the site, how wooded it is, how steep it is, things like that are going to impact the total cost. So you want to look at not only the cost of purchasing the land, but also the cost of improving the land and getting it ready for your house.
Kind of along that lines too is the topography. So in how expensive it will be to develop that land. You need to understand is there a flat spot that is going to work great to be the site of the home's footprint, or are you looking at some sloped land that is going to require a different foundation type, and what kind of cost implications does that have for your build? That's something that we regularly go over with you in the sales process. But also you might come across that your land has some wetlands on it or other protected areas that you actually won't be allowed to build on, which changes your effective building area on the property. So can also have more permitting.
And I was going to say that the slope, there's pros and cons to having a slope site. If you are interested in a view, often the slope site offers better views, can get you up a little bit higher. So there's things to consider. What's important to you, and are you looking for single level living, or are you looking for the house to get up a little bit higher out of the ground so you have a better view?
Yeah. Also in your land search, I think you'll find that out on the market, there are the pieces of land that are available might be in different phases of development already. So you might find some fully kind of prepped or pre-developed sites that may already have their land cleared, might already have some septic design that comes with it. Or you might have found yourself a piece of raw land that's going to need all of that done by you. So understanding if the site's already cleared and what might you have to account for, what you need to do within your budget to get that ready. The driveway is part of that as well. So how long or how steep that driveway is. It can affect the cost of the driveway and also the utility installation. So the longer the driveway, the more expensive the driveway, and the farther the utilities have to go. So the potentially the more expensive the cost of utility installation as well.
Yeah, and for utilities, we're talking mostly about power and sewer and water. So as Allison said, the longer driveway typically means that you're going to have a longer electrical run to get your power from the street all the way up to your house. So that's something to keep in mind. Sewer and water. So if you're in a more urban setting, then you're going to have city public water and sewer often. You'll be able to tap into that. Most of the locations here in New England that we're building on do not have that public water and sewer. So you'll be drilling a well, having a septic installed. It's pretty common, but it is something to keep in mind, especially with the budget. And on the septic, if there has been preliminary testing done, that can be an advantage to a piece of land because they may have already determined where the septic system could go. They may have dug test pits and done perk tests and kind of figured out exactly what needs to be done for a septic system. If that's not done, not a problem. You can have that done by a septic designer and they'll do all that for you. As we talked about the slope sites versus a flat site, excavation is something to think about. The slope sites are going to need more excavation. You just have to remove more of the ground to get a basement in if you're going to have a walkout basement or a standard basement. And then, you may need some retaining walls. So these are all things that can add to the overall, look and aesthetic. But it is important to keep in mind those costs. And as we're going to talk about later in the webinar, this is where having a local builder can be a really good resource because they can take a look at potential pieces of land and give you good ideas, sort of rough estimates of what it may take to do all the excavation. Another thing to keep in mind are in certain locations, there are zoning restrictions, or possibly there's a homeowners association that has requirements. So those are things you're going to want to look into and just see what those restrictions or requirements are. And we're also big fans of solar. So as you think about your site, you think about the orientation of the house and the views and any other features that are going to sort of limit the solar gain. You want to think about that so that you can make sure that your house gets oriented properly for solar panels installed later.
And so in all cases, you'll need to be documenting your site eventually. Once you've closed on that land, you'll need a site, what we call a site survey. So some pieces of land that have been pre-developed might come with a site survey, but more often than not, you'll have to hire out that site survey. And we do recommend doing that once you've closed on the land. And that does add a little bit of time to the process. Finding the site surveyor and getting on their schedule can add, sometimes around months of time to the schedule. But the good news is, no matter how you move forward in building, it is something that you'll need to document with the town, your plans for building. So it's always a good idea to do that. I always like to point out that the name of the professional that you can utilize for those services is varied. So you might find them by searching for surveyors. You might find them under site planners, site engineers, civil engineers, land planners. There's a lot of different folks out there that can provide these services. So kind of understanding and maybe utilizing a couple of those names in the searching can help you out.
Yeah. And the reason why that's important, what they're going to do is they're going to come out and they're going to establish the boundary lines, the property lines. So some sites that are a little bit smaller, that's really important to know. Usually there's restrictions on how close you can build a house to your property lines. So we need to know that before we start getting into design. Also, they're going to do elevations, so contour lines. They're going to be able to tell us what the slope is.
Yep.
If you can put in a slab on grade house, or if you need a basement. And that's important aspects of the design to know exactly what those elevations are so that we can make sure that the house fits into the property.
Right. So that surveyor will be kind of the first player in the team that will make up your home build team. So first, there's obviously you, the homeowner. There will be, first and foremost, usually the next person to be involved would be that surveyor or site planner. Next would be the architect or designer. And if you're working with Unity Homes, that's us. Then you would have your builder or general contractor. And they're going to be coordinating all of the subcontractors that are part of a home build underneath them. That might be the site work, electrical, plumbing, HVAC contractors. Sometimes siding, roofing, drywall might be subcontractors as well. And later on, there might be a landscaping subcontractor as well.
So why is it important to have a local builder involved and this team? And we often get the question of, why doesn't Unity just do all of this work for you? So for every project, as Alison had just mentioned, there is that team that's involved in getting your house to completion. It's no different with a Unity Homes project. There's still the same players involved in that team and getting your house completed. It's just who does what is a little bit different. And the reason why we work with local builder is because we work in such a wide territory. We're not familiar with all of the subcontractors in every area in the Northeast, but your local builder will be. Yeah. So putting together a really good team is an important part of that. And your local builder knowing who the good subcontractors are is such a key part of that. And so we will partner with that local builder to make sure that the project goes smoothly and is completed the way that you want it, using their team of subcontractors and our knowledge of building science and how to build a very comfortable, energy efficient, high performance house.
That local builder can also sometimes have good relationships with the local building department, and getting things through permitting and things like that can be helpful.
So how does that relationship work with all those different players? It sounds a little bit complicated. Sounds like there's a lot of people, but we've done this a lot of times, and it is really pretty straightforward. So on our side, on the Unity Home side, we will have a project manager from our team assigned to every project. So they are the go-to person for all the questions that you as the homeowner may have, but also as the local builder may have questions as well. We like to involve the local builder in the very beginning, even before we get to the build phase. When we start in the design phase, we like to have the local builder involved right from the beginning so that they're familiar with everything that's happening. They can often add a lot of really good input, especially when it comes to orienting the house on the site, the things that we talked about earlier with site work. We want them involved and giving that input and understanding how the progress is working for your project. If you choose a tempo package, which for Unity Homes, you can pick either a shell package or a tempo package. The tempo package adds finishes to what Unity Homes provides for your home. So we have the builder involved in the early phases. They can also give a lot of good input and feedback on the finishes that you're picking. And it also helps them estimate the labor portion of installing those finishes, which will be part of the total package that you're looking at. So as I mentioned before, we've worked with a lot of builders. We've done a lot of projects. We have a pretty good process, and we know what the builder needs in order to be able to provide their scope. And we have good documentation on what Unity is providing versus what the local builder is providing so that there's not overlap or things are not being missed. We will provide as part of our shell package the HVAC specification, so that's the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. We'll do the calculations and provide recommendations on the equipment that is required because that's part of the high performance. And we do that. We'll provide the engineered foundation plans for the builder to put those in. We will do the permit plans that'll be needed, and we'll provide construction documents so that the builder is very aware of all the details of what goes into completing the project. So from the very beginning, it really is a team process. The scopes are very well separated, but yet we're all working together on the same project, and we all want the same result. And you are a part of that as well. So it's really kind of a three-pronged team. You as the homeowner, us as the designer, and the builder of the shell, and then the local builder that is finishing it off on site.
We should also touch on that Unity Homes does take a role in helping you find that local builder. So if that isn't somebody you already have signed on as a part of your team, Unity Homes can help find and vet builders in which you'll still have the ultimate decision of who to work with, but we'll try to help you out with that too.
And we have a good list of builders that we've worked with in the past that we can recommend as well. But as Alison mentioned, if you're in an area where we don't have a builder, we will work with you to find the right partners to fill out that team.
Yeah. So next up, we have a pre-recorded video of Rob, one of our longtime Unity Homes project managers, and he's going to be explaining the role of the project manager in the build phase of the project and how Unity works with the local builder.
Hi, I'm Rob Vogel, a project manager with Unity Homes. I've been with Unity for 8 years. Prior to that, I had my own construction business. One of the first steps along the process of starting out with the build contract is preparing the plans for permitting. And so we reach out to the local municipality to find what is required, and then we'll provide you with the documentation that you need to submit for your permit to the town. Typically, we get introduced to the builder, the local GC, early on in the process so that they are very familiar with our whole system and how we are going to work together. We'll go to them to determine where some of those penetrations are, maybe for the range hood or for the dryer, to see what's going to work best, and working with their HVAC contractor to determine where we're going to put those penetrations. Because we're off-site construction, we do all of those holes in the factory so that everything is tightly air sealed. If there's anything that's decided later, there can be additional penetrations made, but we try to take care of all that up front. Once we've raised the building, which depending on the size of the building can typically be 1 to 2 weeks for most Unity Homes, At the end of the raising, the project manager will typically come and schedule a time to meet with the GC, and very often the clients are there. And we have a whole sign-off process so that we've covered everything on the checklist. And then typically I will walk through with the GC and point out all the penetrations so that they know exactly where we've planned the hose bibs and where the electrical is going to go through the wall. We'll look at areas where there's going to be drop ceilings that are going to be supplied by the general contractor. Basically answer any questions that they have and show them any differences in our system that they might not be accustomed to if this is their first Unity home. Typically when we're doing the walkthrough with the general contractor, we'll try to schedule the blower door test at that same time. And this blower door test is really just a quality control test for us so that we know that we have not missed any of the potential air leaks. As a project manager, we're not on site that much. We're here, but depending where the project's located, we can be here when needed. But typically, we're here for that handoff and then maybe at the end of the project. But we're always available, which I think is one of the nice things. We're always a phone call or an email away, basically working on your dream home, and we want to keep that as fun as it can be.
I saw a question about cost for site prep. We can give you some sort of broad ranges on what site prep would be. And we're talking about site prep, talking about clearing land, cutting down trees, roughing in a driveway, roughing in a building site. So we can give you some rough estimates of what it costs. Unfortunately, though, it is pretty site specific. So that's where early on having a local builder involved, that they can give you a little bit more of a narrow price range. And certain sites, it may require bringing someone in, the local builder, an excavator, someone to take a look at it, and we'll give you a little bit more of an exact, more than a rough estimate. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. It's the size of the trees, it's the number of the trees, it's the length of the driveway, it's the how steep it is. All of those things will sort of factor into the overall cost.
We have another one. Where can I find the details about what's included in a shell estimate and a finish cost estimate? It's a great question. On our website, we have a scope document on the same page as our explanation of the package types that we offer. So we offer a shell package and a tempo package, but that's only a portion of your completed project. So there was also the factors in the scope that are going to be within your local builder. And that breakdown is provided in a nice table on that part of our webpage, as well as a download. So you can receive that from the resources page as well, looking at package types document. But to give you a little brief overview of what's included. So the shell package focuses on our high performance exterior building shell. It's already insulated, framed, sheathed with windows and doors installed, but it also includes interior elements of the floor systems, interior partition walls, and the timber frame. And if there's a basement involved, you'll have some elements of that timber frame and floor system there as well as a construction grade stair that we'll provide. So that's the shell. We also have our tempo package, which can include finished materials with Unity Homes. So that's things like flooring, cabinetry, trim, fixtures. And then you'll have an estimate that will come from your local builder for the other elements, things like the siding and the roofing and drywall and all of your subcontractor work. So let's, next one here is, can Unity build my home and ADU on the same lot?
Yes, we can. And we actually have done that.
Done that a few times.
A few times. Yeah, And if you've looked at our home plans, typically when people are building ADU, they're looking at our nanos. So the nanos are the smallest footprint of our designs on that page. So often they're combining, let's say, a barn or a xyla as the main house, and then the nano as an ADU. That could be as a detached ADU. It could also be attached. We've done both of those.
Yeah. The important thing with ADUs is to understand your local zoning regarding ADUs, because that's very town specific. So we found lots of different towns have different requirements for where the ADU can be, how big it can be. So doing that research locally will be a big help for anyone interested in ADUs. If the local builder can help with selecting suitable land, will Unity help with selecting the local builder before purchasing the land? So that's a good question. The overall process comes into play there. With the Unity sales team is more than happy to speak with people before they have purchased land. Help in guiding through the overall process is something we do regularly. We do like to have our work on selecting the local builder happen once you are vetted for budget and other things like that. So, in the typical sales process, that's something that we're doing. So I think that sounds like something that could potentially work out in that order.
All right. Next question. It's a good question. How flexible are the plans? For example, is it possible to move sections around, such as moving a garage from the left side of the house to the right side? Yeah, definitely. That's what our streamline system was created for. So in that streamline system, you have what we call the core component. So that's one of our platforms, like a barn, a xyla, a trad, a zoom. And then from there, you can plug on components in different ways. Those are sort of predetermined ways, but they're predetermined in a way that will work on a lot of different sites. So you can take that core component, and if it makes more sense for your driveway to have your garage on the left, you can do that. You could have it on the right. You could actually have it on the front or the back as well. So the streamlined design system was created exactly for this situation where we can mix and match. You can mix and match all the different components of the floor plans to figure out what works best for your site and your public needs.
Our next question is a foundation question. What are the key differences between slab on grade and walkout basement in terms of the design process and costs? So that's a good question. Previous in Unity history, a walkout basement would automatically kind of set you up for a more in-depth design process. But with Streamlined, we've now incorporated the ability to have different foundation types in the Streamlined process. So we do have a separate fee that would apply for a full basement or a walkout basement, but we are able to do that within Streamlined still. So that has lessened the cost impact on the design for walkout basement needs. There are some cost implications. A walkout basement is just generally more expensive of a foundation type in terms of the excavation as well as the build that will happen on it. There's a whole extra wall, an insulated offsite fabricated wall that we'll provide for those walkout basements. So that adds to the construction costs as well. But exciting news that it can now happen still in Streamlined.
So next question, is it possible to build in stages? For example, build a detached garage in one spot of land first before building the main house on another spot with one later on. So in that particular instance, in that example, if you're thinking of doing that, we would recommend building the garage on site. There's some disadvantages to do it in phases in that way. And one is what we call the mobilization costs of getting to site. So getting a crane there, getting a crew, getting the panels there, there's a certain cost to that. And every time you do that, you've got to repeat that cost. So garages in particular, because the garage is not essentially high performance, you could build that on site, and then we could come in later and build the rest of the house. We would want to talk about how that happens, and there may be a connection between that garage and the house that happens on site as well. But if that's what you're looking to do, that's the way we would recommend that. Let me take this next question. Next question is about how is liability insurance handled during the process? Who pays for it? Just want to make sure we are covered in case anyone is hurt or property damaged. So good question. And there are several different stages or sort of scenarios of insurance. So we would have liability insurance for the work that we're performing while we're on site. We also have insurance for work that's being done in our factory, as well as the transportation. So that's covered while it's being built in our factory. It's covered while it's being transported through your site. We have liability insurance for our crew that is there. On top of that, your local builder would have liability insurance for the work that they're doing and while their crew is on site. The other piece of insurance that you would want is what's called builder's risk. And that's a very common type of insurance that happens during construction. And you could talk to your local insurance agent, and they could be, could explain to you what that means. But essentially, what builder's risk does is it covers any damage that happens while the house is under construction. That's not a liability issue. So if you had a big windstorm come through and a tree fell on the house while it was under construction, the builder's risk would cover that. So Unity Homes has liability insurance. The local builder has liability insurance. And then either you as the homeowner or the local builder would have the builder's risk insurance while the house is under construction. And when it's completed, then you have homeowner's insurance.
Great. I see that our next question is from current clients. So working with, he's got 2 general contractors he's looking to interview and wants to know what questions he should ask besides the cost question for the GCs that he's considering interviewing.
Well, that's a good question. And I know that we was it a blog post or a newsletter something recently on the website, Joel the Blank, the document that we put. Is it in the 7-step guide?
Yes, we have a step in the 7-step guide that talks about what questions to ask as a general contractor. So it's going to start with things like their experience with high performance homes or offsite fabricated homes. That on both of those areas, they don't need a ton of experience, actually. It's more of a dedication and commitment to making something like that happen, because the Unity Homes crew does come out and do the installation of our panels. So we're fully responsible for the actual implementation of that high performance shell. But we want a builder on board who's going to be respectful and on board with your goals of high performance to make sure that ultimately the project continues in that direction. You may not any more?
Yeah, sure. And again, if you want to download the 7-step guide, there's a little bit more explanation, but there are some things to ask the builder. Visiting some of their past projects is a good idea, so you can take a look at the quality of their work. If you're able to interview some of their past clients, that would be great as well. You can ask questions like, how good were their estimates? Did they come in on budget? Were they on the time frame? But did they get the project done, close to the time that they thought that it was going to take? How are they at communication? You want a builder that's very communicative. So when you email them or give them calls, did they get back to you? Those are some important questions to have. So you just want to get a general sense for the quality of work that they've done, how they interact with you as the homeowner. And as Alison said, ideally that they have experience with high homes, but if not, at least that they understand it and are willing to work with us on that.
Yeah. And almost no construction project of any kind is going to go smoothly 100%. So understanding how they've gotten back on track or fixed something that didn't go the way it was planned, or how they handle things that were unplanned, is also a good thing to understand from their past clients and the builder themselves as well.
Yeah, that's an important thing to understand, is that every project has something that comes up that was unexpected. And so the question is, how does everybody deal with that when those unexpected things come up?
Yeah. The next question is about a warranty and how long that warranty might be. With Unity Homes, we have a 1-year builder warranty, and that's very typical of any builder, site built or offsite fabricated. From there, we do everything we can to support our projects, no matter how old they are, especially if it comes back to something that was part of our scope of work. We've even supported projects that have had damage to our scope of work that was not caused by anything in our scope. For example, a plumbing leak that maybe damaged some panels. We have supported them well after the fact to make sure that that solution is on par with the quality of work that we would want to see done for that repair as well. So in that instance, we support our clients well past that 1-year warranty, but that 1-year warranty is very typical of the industry.
Project managers are routinely taking calls from past clients, answering questions. We want that long-term relationship. We want you to be happy with your house, and we want to get that feedback from you about how the house is working out for you long after it's completed. So we are here and we'll help you in any way that we can.
You'll read this question.
So after the site plan, assume we would work with a septic designer and well company. Would you this be before designing the house, and in what order? The details all seem dependent on each other. So that's a real good question. That yes, often things are happening simultaneously. With once you have a site survey, typically part of that site survey, they'll identify an area that's suitable for building a house. For some sites, it could be a fairly small area. For some sites, it could be a pretty large area. But they'll identify where a house could likely be built. And then they will sort of box out an area of where the house is projected to be, and then work with the septic designer and the wall company to sort of place the rest of those pieces on there. So, if a site is here, then we'll say, well, septic could go here, and that's going to be dependent on the slopes and distances away. It could be, in some cases, that actually the location of the septic then determines where the house can go.
No.
Because of the soil type, soil conditions, and maybe a narrow area leach field can go. So those are, in many cases, it's not critical, because of the size, but in other cases, those things are very dependent on each other, and they can happen so simultaneously. And we can kind of project out where a house footprint would go in relation to some problems.
The next question is, how much do transportation costs increase the total costs? Do I need to keep this in mind if I'm looking to purchase land in, say, New Hampshire versus Connecticut? The transportation costs will vary by the size of the project. But usually they are somewhere in the range of, as low as $10,000 to as high as our project in Wyoming, which might have been something around $50,000. And so your exact location does matter. And again, the size. So a small nano versus a, trad with all the parts and pieces included would impact that. And the distance away as well. So New Hampshire versus Connecticut, if you were here in Keene, New Hampshire, it would be different than, northern New Hampshire or, southern Massachusetts and into Connecticut. So it does play a factor. I wouldn't say that a distance within New Hampshire versus Connecticut should be a large enough impact on the costs to impact where you would rather be located?
Yeah, it's in the grand scheme of things, it's a pretty small percentage of difference within sort of the Northeast in one. So, yeah, I would agree with Allison that if you prefer to live in Connecticut, the cost of Connecticut, I'm sure, is not going to be a driving factor.
Right. So we have, what are the pros and cons of adding a basement, and how much would it cost roughly to add a basement?
Yeah, so first, pros and cons. The cons of adding a basement are mostly the cost, but it does add some cost, and get into that a little bit. The pro is that it increases the size of the house, the living space. It also does help with utilities. So if you have a basement, you can put things like your air handler, your water heater, so that mechanical equipment in your basement, and that frees up some space on the main floor. So big advantage is the extra space. The big disadvantage is the cost. And when it comes to the cost, so I don't have specific numbers because it does depend on the size. But you're adding excavation, you're adding concrete because while your frost walls, your basement walls are going to get higher. You're adding a frame floor structure, but slab on grade. And then with a slab on grade, you have the option of having your finished floor with sealed concrete. But obviously with a basement and a framed floor, then you're going to have to put a finished floor on there. So you're adding the cost of that material and installation. So it really depends. We recommend considering the slab on grade. It's a little bit more efficient. You have less space to heat. It's less costly. There's a lot of advantages, but in certain situations, the basement does make sense, and we can certainly accommodate that.
I also like to explain the difference between a basement that can be finished space and just storage. So if you have a full basement that's fully submerged on all sides, without windows, that actually can't be livable space. It would be allowed by code to be storage only. If you have enough elevation to add some windows, it can then become livable space if it's enough space for them to be egress size. So thinking about that too is important. So the walkout basement, which has full size windows and doors even, is another story. That's very much livable space and can be finished at the time of construction or not. So you can save that for a project later to add to the conditioned square feet or the finished square foot of the house. But when you're thinking of that fully submerged basement, there is a difference between, its ability to be livable, usable space and just storage. All right. So we have, can I purchase just the shell and act as my own general contractor?
Well, the answer is yes. We have clients that do that. We caution it a little bit if depending on your experience level, your experience, your availability. It's a lot. It can take up a lot of time, and there's a lot of details that need to be worked out. So certainly we do it. We know clients that do it. We can work with you on that. We would just want to talk with you a little bit more about your area, your experience, and just the commitment that it is to do that.
Yeah, there's a reason that people do that as their full-time job. It's a full-time job. It's a lot to take on. Some other things that we might advise with that too is, do you have known relationships or options for subcontractors? Because that's a big value of the general contractor as well.
Yes, the same as we talked earlier about why Unity Homes doesn't do the general contractor. One of those reasons is the relationship with the subcontractors.
Yeah.
And that is important. You want to know who are the good subcontractors in your area, but you also want them to be responsive as well. So that's a key factor in that decision.
Yeah. Our next question is about geothermal. Do you work with geothermal as an HVAC option? The answer is if you really wanted to use geothermal, the way that incorporates into a unity home is a lot the same as a air source heat pump. It might need a larger mechanical space in general, but we find that most of our clients end up with air source heat pumps due to cost. So here in New England, we haven't really caught up with the technologies for well drilling that's required for geothermal. And so that installation cost for the well tends to be a little, drives up the price of the system in general. And its efficiencies can be similar or a little bit better than air source heat pumps, but the air source heat pump installation costs just far surpasses the geothermal, I think, in the end for most of our clients.
And that's been our experience, that the upfront costs are significantly higher than the air source heat pumps, and the difference in efficiency is minimal.
Yeah.
So the payback period is much longer, if you ever get there. Understanding that our houses are high performance and they are very energy efficient. So geothermal often makes a whole lot more sense in a house that is not quite as efficient, because then the payback period is a little bit sooner.
Our next question has to do with changing walls. So it says that they see a lot of open dining areas in our plans. Does anyone ever make a formal dining room by enclosing the dining area behind walls and doors?
So the way our platforms, our core components work is that you can have a lot of open space. There are not a lot of structural walls on the inside, so that provides a lot of flexibility. With that flexibility, you can add walls. You can take certain walls out, but you can also add walls. I'm not actually, can't think of anyone who's added a full dining room, but I know it's certainly possible. With that flexibility of the interior layout, as long as you're not changing windows around, then you can have walls.
Okay. I know we've had a plan where somebody wanted to close in the kitchen, and we have done that. And so that meant, because the kitchen is on one end of the farm in this case, they added a wall to make that kind of close off a bowl to the other spaces. But I don't see why, we could work with you on a design that makes sense for that, for a single wall. So you've got 5 minutes left. We'll try to answer a few more questions and wrap up. So for slope construction, would we need to add additional footprint for equipment?
So it's a good question again, because in order for us to install the panels, we do need a crane. We also use a piece of equipment called a telehandler, which is kind of like a four-wheel drive forklift. So we do like to have a little bit of extra space. It's not significant. Typically, slope sites, you're going to have some area where you have flat loam, or something. The driveway is going to level out. We often can find some space. It is a consideration. We do need to plan for it ahead of time, but often in the overall layout of the site, we could find somewhere to put that crane and the panels and equipment that we need.
Here's a somewhat related question I'll throw in there too. What are some pitfalls or constraints to consider as part of a logistic delivery, in addition to weight, things like power lines and other things? So what are some things about the site that we need to pay attention to?
Yeah. So you pointed out a couple of good things. Bridges. So there are bridges of weight limits near there. We want to pay attention to those. If there are low power lines, we want to pay attention to those. Typically, in most places, our panels on the truck, they need to conform to federal regulations as far as height. So most times, we can get under power lines. Occasionally, there are older roads with railroad bridges or something overhead that are a little bit low. But again, in almost every case, there's an alternate route to get to that site. Once we get to the site, some of the considerations are the driveway. So we like to have a driveway at least 12 feet wide so that we can get the trucks with the panels in. And the radius of turns, so if there's really sharp turns on the driveway, we need to be looking at those. And turns on hills are another challenge for trucks. So those are, something.
Don't worry.
And that is, when we're in that early design phase, we are taking a look at those things. Our project managers are putting eyes on it and identifying and potential issues. We'll send, if we need to, we'll send somebody out there to take a look at it and get an opinion and improvements that need to be made.
We'll try to get through this last one quickly. Let's see. I'll use this one as our ending one. Do you have a total project estimate template that prospective buyers can use to estimate all the various costs they can expect to encounter? So for this, I would suggest reaching out via our contact page and making a connection with one of the sales advisors. We have resources available to help lay out the different costs that you might expect, but we're very hesitant to try to project for you what those costs might be because they can be so unique based on where you're located, your site, your design. There's so many factors in there that we try not to overstep and provide information on those because it wouldn't be as accurate as it could be if you're getting those costs from an actual local builder. But we can definitely help lay out the costs that you can assume that you'll need to plan for and know what to go after for costs.
And we can also take a look at any estimates that you get and provide some feedback and info on those as well. All right. So
that time.
Yeah, we're going to the end of the hour. We appreciate everyone joining us. All the great questions that you asked. Sorry that we couldn't get through all of them. But we will be trying to do these webinars on a quarterly basis. And so we should be having one come up in a few months. And again, thank you for joining us and listening to our session today.
Thank you. Take care.